Hey, it's Benji Cole, son of Al Cole from CBS Radio and host of People of Distinction, the talk that gives an in-depth view of some of the most dynamic, intelligent, and successful people on the planet. Run to our website, peopleofdistinction.org for more info, or you can always email me directly at benji@alcoleenterprises.com. And on the line with us today, we have Ken Saik. We'll be discussing his fantastic book, Helping Hands, available for purchase through Amazon, BarnesandNoble.com. But if you guys want to gather everything that Ken has to offer, well, do yourself a favor and head directly to his personal site, AuthorKenSaik.com. Now, author and Ken, both traditional spelling. Now, I'm going to spell Saik for you just to make sure there's no confusion. That's SAIK.com. There, not only will you be able to find more information on Ken himself, you'll find more information on this fantastic book, as well as find hyperlinks set up to take you to the purchasing page. So one more time, that's AuthorKenSaik.com. Ken was brought to our network, People of Distinction, today by some of the best movers in the business, AuthorFlex Media Publishing. So if you have a book that you'd like moved, do yourself a favor and contact our great friends over there at AuthorFlex. You can find out more information on them at AuthorFlexMedia.com. So without further ado, let's jump right in. Ken, first and foremost, welcome to People of Distinction, and thank you so much for being a guest. How are you?
Oh, I'm very good, and I'm very thankful that I could be a guest and have an opportunity to talk about Helping Hands.
Absolutely. Well, listen, the honor is all ours, and we're truly looking forward to this. I mean, let's just call a spade, Ken. Given the past year and a half to 2 years, or 20 years, it feels like, with this pandemic, there's been a lot of adversity, and there's been a lot of turbulence in the air that we've all been experiencing. And a book of this magnitude, even though it's not directly related to that, we're talking about adversity that your main protagonist goes through and how they overcome the obstacles. And I think there's so much wisdom to be pulled from this book that can be applied to our day-to-day lives. So this is truly a gift for us, and we're very much looking forward to everything that we're going to be discussing today. Now, I know we have so much to cover, but before we go into the book, let's hold off slightly, Ken. Start by telling our listening audience a little bit more about your background and yourself, please.
Well, I guess a good way to start is, for as long as I can remember, I have always loved writing. Now, that was a personal understanding, but that was reflected by a grade 6 teacher who recognized that I had a creative writing talent. She said, "Someday you are going to write books." She was right. Anyway, that was as early as grade 6. Now, when I was in senior high, I had the pleasure of a couple of good English teachers who encouraged me to do some writing, and at one point, I even got an honorable mention in the province for one of my poems. So I thought, I will get to this later on. But then I entered the teaching profession, and if anybody knows teachers and marking, that tends to take up almost all of your day. So writing had to take a back door for a while. But even then, I managed to sneak in some writing. And what was really amazing is when I'd finished something, I was on a high. I was so excited about what I read or what I wrote that as a social studies teacher, I don't have anybody to share that with. But next door were the English teachers. And I'd always drop over and say, "Guess what I just finished writing? You want to listen to that?" I was a pest. At any rate, so I managed to squeak in a little bit of writing then, but my hope was that when I retire, that I could make that one of my main preoccupations. And so I retired in 2006, and that's when I began to start doing my writing. At first, small things like a novella, and then I went all the way up to a huge novel like Baggage Burdens, which is the companion to Helping Hands, and then several others. So at this point, I have 8 books that I've got published, with a 9th one going through some beta readers to polish it up and point out what could be better. And I'm looking forward to that one being launched sometimes next year.
Fantastic. Ken, congratulations on everything that you've been able to achieve. And, before we go any further, I just want to be the first person to tell you here on our network how much we appreciate the work that you have done in really shaping and molding the young minds of the future. My listening audience is aware of this. I've had a very brief stint in education myself. I taught college for 3 years and I taught fourth graders for 1 year. Absolutely loved my fourth graders. It was amazing. It was such an incredible experience. And my significant other now, she is a high school teacher. She's been teaching for about 15 years, actually social studies. She's a history teacher as well. And, we constantly talk about the pressures that come with being an educator, because anybody that is in that area of expertise, in that realm, in that world, you understand, yeah, you may be a history teacher, you may be a math teacher, an English teacher, so on and so forth, but we know you have to wear a lot of hats, okay? Sometimes you're a teacher, other times you're a friend, sometimes you're a therapist, right? I mean, there's so many hats that you have to wear. So let me again be the first to thank you for all of the work that you put in, because teachers never get the amount of appreciation that they deserve for the work that they have to do.
Except from our students. And that's what keeps us going.
There you go. Absolutely. Well, Ken, listen, without further ado, Helping Hands. Tell us a little bit more about your book.
Well, that's a book, particularly talking about helping hands, that comes about from a feeling of, I missed the boat. I had a friend who had some real serious problems, and we got into some kind of conversations, and she revealed things to me that she wouldn't normally. First of all, she wouldn't talk to a man because she didn't trust men. She certainly didn't trust men with beards, and I had a beard. So I should have been the last person for her to talk to. But she revealed some things in her life that explained an awful lot. Like, she had a very controlling kind of character. It was the only thing that would give her a feeling of safety and confidence. And if she didn't have that, then she would make certain that she was always off by herself. I always felt like she was kind of a lonely person. But the thing about her was that when you got a chance to talk to her, you knew she loved people. She certainly loved kids. She was completely relaxed in talking with kids. But with adults, she would tend to kind of back off and just kind of keep hidden. Well, I ended up finding out why. And so at that point, I wanted to be able to be in a position to help her. She'd shown a bit of a trust in me. And so I was looking forward to doing that. But the more she got to know me and the more I got to know her, the more uncomfortable it became. So she adopted one of her other strategies. It was called run away. So she ran away, and I could not help offer her any kind of ideas in trying to cope with her struggles. Gone. My only way to try and reach her was to do it in a book. And so that's basically the driving force behind writing Helping Hands. I'd like to read a short excerpt to give your listeners a chance to know Jill a little bit better. The context is that Jill's talking with her friend Bill, and they're talking about Kathy, the sister of Jill, and Kathy's impressions of their father. So I begin. If you think Kathy's experiences are based on fact, can you accept her impression of your father? I don't know if I want to. And deny the truth, says Bill. I don't know if I want to accept that truth. Maybe that's something you need to pray about. Bill glances at Jill for her reaction. And that's another thing that I can't appreciate. Irritation raises Jill's voice. She shifts around in her seat, facing Bill, ready to see his reaction as well as hear his words. Now is the time to challenge him. Praying? He asks. Yes. Bill's response is swift, as if she's blocking a blow and preparing a counterattack. Every time you pray, you know how you start? You begin with, Dear Father. Do you have any idea what that does to me? Bill's challenge shoots out like a machine gun, spitting bullets. It immediately turns me off. Bill looks at Jill to determine if he's heard correctly. Do you know what father means to me? It means a hard, uncaring, mean, violent man. It means look out. He's the one who's about to punish you, fairly or not. Asking him for anything can result in his wrath. So why do I dare ask for anything? Why do I dare hope for a favorable answer? I've learned I have no one I can count on except myself. No one. Bill's breathing is coming in gulps. Her red face stares intently at Bill. Silence greets her outburst. As Jill watches Bill driving, she is certain she's shocked him. She expects she has lost a friend and prepares to accept the consequences. When he signals, pulls over to the shoulder and stops, she wonders if he'll get out of the car and leave her alone. Well, she demands as he shifts into park. She wants a response from him before he leaves. It's the least he can do, now that she's shown him who she really is. Bill stares at Bill's every motion. When he turns the engine off, she takes a deep breath. He's about to walk out. She thinks of Joseph and how he left her. All of a sudden, out of the blue, Bill unbuckles his seatbelt. Oh, why couldn't I have kept my mouth shut? So in that, you have an idea of the kind of tension that's driving Jill. And it's based an awful lot on her father, who was an alcoholic, and he had beat her, and he had instilled in her the idea that she's not a loving person. And so how can anyone love her? And so she really doesn't like him. Hate him? She would not want to say she hates him, because that makes it sound like she's like her father, and that's the last thing she wants to do. So this is Jill, and you have an idea of Bill. His faith is very strong, so he'd like to reveal something to her. Now, what he reveals is what I wish I would have had a chance to say to the real Jill, but I missed the chance, and so I had to write it in this book. Anyway, Jill does have friends, and those friends are friends that he doesn't really accept. I mean, Bill she didn't accept originally because she thought he betrayed her. And her niece, the same thing. And her grandmother, well, her grandmother was a dear old lady, but she's kind of way off in the distance. And her sister, well, her sister had run away from home, or Jill had. Her sister was a chicken. She couldn't really believe in her sister either. And then there's one other person that's absolutely critical to Jill's well-being, but she cannot face even admitting that he exists.
Again, here on the line with Ken Saik. We're discussing his fantastic book, Helping Hands, available for purchase through Amazon, BarnesandNoble.com, or directly through his personal site, authorkensaik.com. You know, Ken, thank you very much for that excerpt, and it truly does illuminate so much with regards to the characters. And, you know, a question that I have, and really a curiosity for myself, Ken, clearly we know, as you've stated, because of a relationship that you've had with a close friend, this book was developed and the idea was created. Now, talk to us about inspiration. What inspired you to embark upon this journey, comprise this book? Why did you feel the public would be able to benefit from the message that you were trying to relay?
Well, I think the real heart of this is that an awful lot of people think that they can solve their own problems. Certainly that was the case with Jill, because she couldn't trust anybody. And what she has to learn is that that's not the case. And the bottom of the line, and that's really the heart of what's even shown in Baggage Burdens, it really doesn't matter how hard you try to help someone, if they're not ready to hear what you've got to say, nothing's going to happen. Now, in Helping Hands, Jill had hit rock bottom. She had the absolute worst of everything that could happen to her. She had no choice. She knew she had to start looking to and listening to other people. That started her on her road of healing. Healing with her eldest son, healing with her sister, healing with her mother, and maybe healing with her father if she could really buy the truth. And then the relationship with Bill, the guy she thought she couldn't trust but is learning otherwise. Mm-hmm. There's a real reward in connecting with people. It's like your strength doubles and triples over and over again.
Absolutely. Absolutely. You know, and that's really where I wanted to go next. Now, of course, there is a lot of options that we've already discussed in terms of resources that we have available, other people being one. In this instance, Bill was that reassuring force for her. It took some time for her to trust him and lower those guards, but that was definitely someone she was able to lean on. Now, in addition to that, Bill, of course, brings in his religion, and then God is incorporated into the mix. Now, I'm curious, Ken, because whenever anybody goes to your Amazon, Barnes & Noble page, your personal website, they start to do any research on the book, in the moment that three-letter word, God, comes into play, as human beings are naturally accustomed to doing, they'll formulate preconceived notions. So I want to give you the opportunity to either dispel any narratives or to double down. In your opinion, Ken, do you feel that this is a book that is specifically geared for religious readers, or anyone, regardless of religious background or belief, would be able to pick up the book and find value in the words?
Well, I listened to a reviewer, and that's exactly what the reviewer had said, and that is that while faith is an important component in the book, what is more stressed is the relationships that you have with friends and with family and how much they can do for you. Mm. And that is, I think, the absolute key. Even if you've had turmoils with them, it's surprising how they can come to your help and your aid and bring things around for you. And that's probably a really good eye-opener in this book.
Guys, isn't that something that we just love to discuss here at People of Distinction? I mean, we are constantly talking about our human family and how we are all connected, and things are a lot better when we come together. We're able to overcome obstacles and break down barriers through unity. And I love that this is the message that's being preached here because it fits directly with our ideology here at People of Distinction. Ken, as we start to tie out, as we start to close down this fantastic interview, what would you say was a highlight for you in writing the book? Or if not a highlight, maybe something that surprised you that you weren't expecting prior to embarking upon the journey?
Well, I would say the real highlight was the pre-research, the information that this character had revealed to me that really explained why she was the kind of person she was. And that, to a large extent, is what is really shown in the book called Baggage Burdens. So if you really want to have, the listeners really want to have a good understanding of Jill and how and why she behaved the way she did and how it affected her family and how it affected her children, then I would encourage the listeners to look to getting a special deal on Black Friday. The deal is email me, I'll give you the code word, and you can get the book, Baggage Burdens, for free. The email is callingkensaik@gmail.com. callingkensaik@gmail.com. I'd really like to see that people have a good understanding of the kind of damage that an alcoholic parent can do to a child. And it's not just the child then, but the child for 30 years, and the child is then have a family, and it hurts the husband, it hurts the friends, and it hurts the children. And so while Jill was very strong-willed and she tried to overcome it. It was a roller coaster ride.
Fantastic.
That's an important thing to know and understand. If nothing else, it would give people who are in that position the backbone to say, hey, go for help. Whether it's AA, what's another friend, whatever, go for help.
You know, Ken, those are fantastic words of advice. And, you know, that was a question that I wanted to go into as well. So if there's any other words of wisdom that you can offer, we know that a lot of times the trauma that we experience in our early childhood years or in our developmental years stay with us. And those scars are apparent years down the line, as is the case with your main protagonist. Things that were done to her when she was very young cause her then as an adult to have a difficult time connecting with individuals, right? Those scars are still very, very prevalent. Ken, during your research, during your discussions that you had with the real life person that the character Jill is based upon, what did you discover that you could relate to our listening audience now? Of course, listen, reaching out, resources are available. People that are around you, your support system. We know religion and reaching out to a higher force, in this instance, God, could be a resource that is always readily available for you. But anything else outside of that you may be able to relate to our listening audience, anybody that has those scars that they're trying to really break down and overcome, how does someone go about doing that?
Well, I'll tell you, then I had the revelation from this particular person about her reaction to praying and Father. It really prompted me to go and have a talk with a pastor to say, how can I attempt to reach a person like that? Mm-hmm. And one of the things that came out in the conversation was, it's the term Father, which has connotations that are negative. Don't use it. Absolutely. All right? God might be one. If they're more in tune with Jesus and what he did, and they see him as a loving entity, then use that name and that person to bring them around to look at and say, here's who you can turn to. Now, from my standpoint, and I'm saying it from a faith standpoint because that's where I do come from, and I can honestly say I've always looked to the Lord to support me, always. Mm-hmm. And that was even when I was teaching. That was even when I was teaching a particular class or I had to reach a particular student. How do I reach that person? And a lot of times I didn't know. But as Bill will say, there are times I find words were put in my mouth that I hadn't even expected. And boy, did they ever hit home. So I would say that for people who have a faith background and they're looking at what and how you can share, I really like that aspect of the book. But it's not the only thing that's really good, but it is a real positive from that standpoint that I like.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Great words of wisdom. Guys, everything that he said. But going back to the first thing, really it boils down to understanding. I mean, from a standpoint of if you are trying to assist someone else overcome the tragedies and the scars that they've developed, understanding triggers, right? Understanding trigger words are so important because, of course, your intent may be in the right place, but the slightest word that you say can instantly take them back to that experience. So trigger words are so important to be fully aware of and to understand on this journey. Guys, listen, so much more can still be said. Nothing else is going to be, okay? You know what you have to do. I've said it a number of times already. I know you're already there, but I'm going to re-impress it for you one last time. Here on the line with Ken Saik, we're discussing his fantastic book, Helping Hands, available for purchase through Amazon, BarnesandNoble.com, but directly through his personal site, AuthorKenSaik.com, to gather all of the information and make sure that you're looking in and taking advantage of the Black Friday promotion that he already discussed, so that this way you can gather the companion book that goes along with Helping Hands for free. So take advantage of that Black Friday promotion. I know I will. Ken, this has been truly an honor, and your words of wisdom were so beneficial. Thank you once again for being a guest with us today on People of Distinction.
It was my pleasure. I always love talking about my books.